Yeah, right. So Neil, you much of the things I've been going to ask you is the topics you're going to be discussing on Saturday. Am I right? At the TechSauce Summit.
That's right. I've been asked to do a talk at the TechSauce, which is I think my favourite tech conference that I've been to, and certainly in Asia. I think it's one of the best ones in Asia. And they've invited me back for year 3. It's my 3rd year presenting for them, and I must be doing well. And I can talk about lots of things, but at this event, I'm talking about leadership. I think at this moment in time, we really need leaders to step up and execute, and we've got a lot of people to look after. Yeah. And so it's time for whether you're just not just, in fairness, if you're a team lead, whether you're a leader of your family, whether you're a manager, whether you're a director, or whether, like myself, I'm a chairman, we've got a lot of responsibility. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I'll be talking about that and how can we be more effective. I wouldn't say in post-COVID, because in fairness, we're not post. Mm-hmm. So let's not get too excited about being past this thing. We're kind of past the middle, maybe. Mm-hmm. I think Winston Churchill had a great quote which said, it's the beginning of the end. Mm-hmm. So touch wood, it's the beginning of the end. But the world has changed. But in fairness, we had bad leaders before the crisis. We'll have bad leaders afterwards. Mm-hmm. Let's try and put a lot of focus on being really need good leaders at the moment, and talk about how anyone can become a good or great leader.
Yeah. So we were talking about changes, and one of the questions I asked you, the primer, it's more of what are these changes that we have we should expect moving forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've done a lot of work in culture, and where we are currently seems to be, that there is a culture, or certainly some changes in culture, and certainly some changes in technology. I forgot the amount of times I've been talking to banks about, hey, why don't you, let more of your staff work from home? I'm very passionate about how do we improve people's work life, make them happy again. It seems strange that we all kind of, we panic in the morning, drop the kids off, have to rush to a physical place at 9 o'clock where everyone else does, and the traffic's awful. And some people work with people they don't like, for companies they don't respect, doing jobs they don't want to do. And so I've always thought, and we do that for a big proportion of our life. We spend more time with work colleagues than we do with family. And so I've been a big proponent around how do we make work life just a bit better, yeah. What we've seen, before said, can we be more flexible at work? And many companies, especially banks, said no, we cannot. It's impossible. We cannot do this. And we saw in a week that actually it was possible. That if the demand is there, what a terrible, in fairness, terrible thing to happen with the pandemic, but it did, and we can't change that. But it did mean that suddenly we were forced to work from home. And I look at this, and I know there's lots of thought leaders going, oh, the world's changed, we use cash, everyone will work from home, oh my God, blah, 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 blah. Let's just calm down a little bit, yeah. It's a few things. One is humans really like comfort, and they really want to go back to the world before. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, we really do want to go back. And what we're seeing is early signs. There's a backlash. And so in the UK, there's been free parties and, drug fests, and, there's been some people have died and all sorts of things. And there's going to be a whole summer of free parties and people congregate because they've been cooped up for so long. It's like a pressure cooker. Boom, and it's exploded. They want to go back to the world of their own and party like it's 1999. So there's a bit of that in there. There's, I think, some things. What I've noticed is, I think what it's done, it's given people a taste of the new world. Mm-hmm. And so for people who've never done a cashless transaction, they're doing cashless transaction. For some people who've never ordered their food online, this is the first time they've done it. Now, I predict it'll be a blended model. So, people like to shop. So maybe for their food shopping, they'll go back to the shops. But maybe if they have a big event, or they're going to order lots of heavy things, heavy food items, then because they've used e-commerce before, they'll use it again. Oh, I'll do the shopping, normal shopping in person because I enjoy going to the shops, blah, blah, blah. But actually, when I've got big orders, I'll do it online because I've done that before and I know it works, I know it's safe and it delivers. And I think we'll see that across all industries. But the ultimate test for me is, like, imagine this time next year and you say to your boss, hey, boss, my father's sick or my mother's sick. I'm going to work from home for 3 months. Will they say yes? That's, for me, that is the test. So we proved that it could be done, that we could work from home for 3 months, but would they allow it? So, culture for me is like a piece of rubber, yeah? You can stretch it, you stretch it, and we're currently stretched out. We're in a new world, yeah? We work from home, we don't touch people, we wear masks, we do all these different things. But once the impetus is gone, does it just snap back?
Yeah, true.
To exactly the way it were. I hope and I pray that it is a new world. And looking at some of the surveys, it seems to be people don't want to go back to full-time work. And they don't want to stay at home all the time either.
True.
And so I think they wanted a balance. So 2 days in the office, 3 days at home. And what a great thing for traffic, especially in cities, like Manila and Jakarta and some of the ones in Australia, Sydney. What a great thing for traffic if we're not having all those people on the road. Great thing for reduction in pollution and all sorts of great knock-on effects. If we could just be more flexible and just treat our staff with a bit more kind of compassion and flexibility. This is what I'm hoping. There's going to be some, people say we've accelerated digital transformation. Yeah, it has. Yeah, I mean, people are more used to online training. But let's not go overboard. I saw someone, a thought leader in education. Well, they said they were a thought leader. I presume they were. I really couldn't be bothered to research if they were or not. But they said, all training forever will be over Zoom now. And I'm like, I'm not so sure. I think people like going to training courses and meeting other people. And same with conferences, yeah. Online conferences are, TechSauce doing a great one, but I think, people really want to go back to a lot of this thing is meeting people, spending time with people. I think we can do that digitally. I think that's going to be, a very interesting conference. But we're not going to have the end of conference party. We're not going to. But they celebrate. There's very sophisticated how they set up the conference. There's separate rooms. You go chat to people. I'm doing a Q&A, all this kind of stuff. So it's going to be good. But as I said, I think the major impact is now people have had a taste of this new world, and we're not going to fully rush and do everything like we did during this pandemic they're in at the moment. But I think we'll kind of pick and choose. So I hope we'll come out the other side. We'll all be a bit more digital, and we'll all be a bit more forgiving, I think, and caring, because life's tough and we've had a tough ride in this thing, and hopefully we'll be a bit more flexible in how we work as well.
I see.
But yeah.
So what's your take on the companies that refuse to adopt the change? There are companies.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, there's some companies. We are going to go through a fairly significant economic downturn. Yeah, I know the stock markets have bounced back, but the stock market isn't an accurate depiction of really the true economic situation. Let's face it. A lot of small businesses are going to go bust. That's going to have a knock-on effects. Even some, large businesses are going to go bust. That's going to have knock-on effects in their supply chain. That the businesses that relied on them are going to go down. There's going to be significant unemployment. Some of the predictions are pretty scary in that space. Obviously, governments are stepping in and trying to support all this. That really is going to mean that companies who don't change and don't look after their staff, it doesn't matter, because there's going to be a lot of staff, and that is a shame. The war on talent is kind of finished. Yeah. Now there's going to be a glut of talent. I got an application. I won't say who or what, but a really senior vice president from a big, major, well-known e-commerce company. apply for a job at PictureWealth here in Australia. I was like, oh my goodness. Admittedly, I was like, wow, and so you're going to see that. You're going to see just unfortunate people are going to lose their job, certainly not based on skill, either be in the industry they're in or just, purely because of the slowdown. And so there's going to be a lot of great talent out there. But that does mean that companies don't need to change. They don't need to worry about looking after their staff. I think we'll probably see salaries dropping. The ones that don't change, though, I think, this is an ideal time to change. If you're smart, we've got a lot more flexibility. And as a leader, you have a lot more flexibility. Yeah. If we think about it, it's what we're talking about at TechSauce. We need leaders to succeed.
True.
We need them to succeed to stop mass panic. So you look at country leaders, yeah. Even apart from a few exceptions, we know who they are. But apart from a few exceptions, even a kind of bad leader has been seen as okay. Okay leaders have been seen as good. And good leaders have been seen as amazing. And amazing leaders, that's just Jacqueline O'Hearn down in New Zealand. So because we've had to forget, we're less critical. We need them to succeed. We're praying, you have to succeed and make sure that our country's going to get through this. And so the same is happening in companies. Whereas before, the staff and the shareholders and maybe the partners would be more critical and less forgiving. Now there's an open invite to please lead. We'll forgive you, make mistakes, doesn't matter. We need you to succeed. Otherwise, the world's in a quite a bad place. And so the companies that take the opportunity, that they've shown that they can do the digital transformation, will take out we would hope that they would then be more successful than the companies that didn't adopt change. But there are some companies that will, just refuse to change, and they're betting that when we get through this crisis, it will all just, that new culture that we've stretched the rubber of the culture of how we used to live, and we stretched it into this new kind of during COVID shape that actually just snap back. And they don't need to incur any costs, they don't need to do anything, they just, and maybe they'll succeed, but only time will tell, I feel.
So how do you, in your forecast, how long do you think everybody's going to be staying at home or forced to do telecommute work? In your opinion, how long do you see this happening?
It's different by different countries. We've kind of been hit by two things. So I wouldn't like to choose between them, which is worse. But let's not discuss that. But we had the COVID, and now we've got a lot of marches and civil unrest and people unhappy, and the Black Lives Matter movement, which absolutely massive supporter of that, and that's got people. It's my hometown in Bristol where they threw the statue of Colston in the harbour there. Yeah, and that's kind of broken the lockdown. So no matter what happens now, the kind of lockdown's done. Yeah, so the government's having to lift the lockdown anyway because it doesn't matter, it's done. Yeah, so people are having rave parties, they're doing mass marches, they're doing this. So the kind of lockdown is finished. Countries can't keep the lockdown anymore. They're just going to go bankrupt. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the sad reality. Is whatever happens, the economy has to start. And so I wouldn't say people compare the pandemic to like a war scenario. I think it's a bit much, and certainly war's a lot more dreadful, lasts longer, and the kind of consequences are a lot bigger. But if you do want to compare it to a war, people in London were going out and working in the Blitz, bombs were dropping, they're out working. At the end of the day, stuff still needs to happen, no matter how bad, no matter how bad the situation is. People need to get the economy working and executing stuff. And so I think we're going through that stage now that at least the countries that have come out the first wave, don't forget, India really getting heavily hit at the moment. South America is getting really heavily hit. They're still kind of on the up. The ones that are kind of on the down realize no matter what, the economy's got to open. The government just won't have the money to support people who don't have a job. Secondly, to report the infrastructure like healthcare and stuff. So it's an unfortunate thing that, and we'll see what happens if, and please we don't, but if we get a second wave or a mutation, at the end of the day, we can't have 100% lockdown on the economy.
So one of the industries right now that's really hardly hit by this are the banks, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Now, there's also a shift there. I mean, you have to do either online banking or through your credit cards. Do you think banks will take a hit as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the banks that have been kind of that have been better able to adapt through this crisis, they tend to be the laggards and they tend to be the most advanced. So if you're really advanced, as in technology advanced, then you've digitized a lot of your process. You've got straight through processing, nearly everything you can do online or through a mobile phone. And if you're a real laggard, then you do everything through the fax. Anyway, so kind of you're fine. It's the kind of the ones in the middle. But don't forget what a bank does. If the oil of a country, is in fairness, if we look at a country as a machine, the moving parts are us biological bits, humans, the wonderful people we are, we're the bits moving around. Now the oil, to make all of that, when we plug bits together, we put lots of biological capital together and we call it a company. Small bits of family, and all these bits move around. But the oil which makes all these bits move is money.
True.
And so you can think of it as the person who fills up the oil tank is the government, or and certainly some of the banks as well. But the ones who really distribute the oil and make sure that every part gets oiled is the banks. And there's been some reports on, BCG did a good infographic recently. You can have a look at that. Where in banks have they been hard hit? So let's look at the kind of product sets that have been hard hit. Anything in insurance, is having a tough time, and so that's certainly around kind of health, life, income protection, all that kind of stuff has been hit pretty bad. Anything in lending, again, it's an obvious thing. Businesses are going out of business, unfortunately. If a bank's kind of really verticalized, or a pension fund is say verticalized in hospitality, tourism, travel, or retail, well, they're in some pain. They will be in some pain, and just like that we've got to always think about the staff in these companies. But the bank as well will be suffering. So anything in lending, corporate, small business, or consumer unsecured lending, especially. Then we've had so they're the kind of main ones that have been hit. Trade finance as well has been pretty badly hit because trade slowed down. And then you've got to think kind of retail payments have slowed down. We've done a lot of e-commerce, but anything in store just hasn't happened. There hasn't been any stores that have been open to go to. So that's been pretty hard hit. And then you've got all the, and then what we're going to see is just, liquidity issues. So we're going to see all these defaults and the knock-on effect from defaults. So a good example, banks going to get double or triple or quadruple hit. So a good example might be, so they lent the money to a small hotel chain, pre-COVID, bank, hotel chain, small hotel chain goes bust, and so they've lost the money on that. They had insurance, business insurance, that's gone, and the staff there, some of the staff had mortgages and cars they can't pay back, bang, that's gone. They had credit cards, bang, that's gone. They've claimed on their health insurance, okay, that's a massive cost now. And so it's like a domino, boop, 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 boop. And that's unfortunately how we're going to see. And a lot of there is a sentiment, depending which country you're in, but generally the banks are bad people, and they always profiteering. And there's certainly some more aggressive banks than others, but generally now good, they should make money when the market's good, because look at what they're having to deal with now. and they're like almost like a second government because they're looking after millions and millions of people in the country, millions, much more than a telco. As much as I love the telco industry, I mean, they do provide amazing infrastructure, and they provide data and communication. But a bank is really supporting everything now: people's pension, their life, their kids' education, their car, their house. There's so much stuff, and a bank's job now is really right. How do I survive? So I can kind of not only look after all my staff, but look after my customers, and they're being flexible. They're trying to be as flexible as they can with loan repayments and others, and trying to do the right thing and do the the insurance payouts that's required, and then kind of working with the government on stimulus. In fairness, I'm glad I left a bank. I think it'd be a really tough time working in a bank at the moment. It's they do have a pivotal societal role to play. So that's the kind of product stuff, and then we can talk about which of the banks are more effective, but it depends. It depends what kind of bank. And then you've got the fintech banks, which are very different as well.
Which banks are more at risk of getting into trouble, the bigger ones or the smaller ones?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So I think let's start at the kind of the ones that are most in trouble. I would definitely say are the kind of new neo banks that have just started. Maybe they've just started, did the raise, they've got quite a few customers because they're loss making. When you start, they're very much spending. Most digital banks really only succeed. I mean, true digital banks, a lot of them call themselves banks, but they're just a payment app and a funny colored credit card, But the ones who are maybe they've spent a lot of money to acquire the customers, they're going to do another big fundraise, suddenly, bam, COVID. And a lot of their clients then move into the bigger banks because deposit guarantees and, just general risk, they want to take their money out and put it in a bigger bank. Some of those are doing quite well, but we saw Monzo, I said, a 40% reduction in valuation. They didn't close a full round, but they did get a lot of money in, which is good for them. I like the Monzo guys. Revolut, again, laying off staff. Monzo laying off staff. So in that space, there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of winners. And I feel sorry for the people in Hong Kong. So you had 8 digital bank licenses, and they're all just starting to launch now. Not the greatest time in a downturn. Just forget COVID. Just look at the economics. Not a great time to launch digital bank. One would think. Then the next level above, you've got the kind of credit unions and very small banks. Depending if they were very lending intensive, they're gonna give it trouble. They got less capital, and they'd have some concerns around the liquidity. Bigger banks, you would hope that their capital adequacy ratio is quite high. It depends which country you're in. So if you're worried about your savings, just make sure your bank does have the deposit guarantee from the government, and the amount of money that you have in your account doesn't exceed that, the deposit guarantee. So many countries have that. Whatever happens, your money is safe. So so if I was going to pick, I'd say in this particular crisis, I'd say that the bigger banks were a safer bet. And the neo banks, we've already seen the valuations drop. They're not raising as much as they could. But there'll be some winners out of that. You've got, here in Australia, we've got some amazing neo banks. I'm a customer of Judo, which are an SME bank. I think people like Judo and others are going to be fine. It really depends what they expose themselves to and how much liquidity, and because they're operating more like a startup, where were they in their fundraising? If they've just raised a big fund pre-COVID, they're going to be fine. If they were at the end of the runway and just about to start raising because they needed more capital, that's going to be a tricky, and then, so I think, but we don't know. So the whole point is we're going to see Domino start to fall now. So governments have been, paying for furlough. Now we're starting to see the domino effect, which is that they're starting to lay off staff because the government stopped paying them. Of course, what happens, all their suppliers, you're seeing a lot of kind of fintech consultancies now are starting to lay off staff, are struggling.
Yeah.
80% of IT projects at banks have been cancelled or put on hold. And so then we get the ripple effects through the whole wider ecosystem on this. And so, really need to, as a leader, is to battle down the hatches, reduce costs where you can, look after your staff, look after your customers, and try and pivot towards profit. Our business, we have a profitable business model, so we're good. We closed, just at the bottom of the financial crash, where the market was the lowest. So we were in a better place than many. Will there be a wholesale crash of banks? I don't think so. But some of the stories you see, this is the worst, recession in 300 years in the UK. That's kind of slightly concerning. That's the worst. What was worse 300 years ago? It was like the Black Death or something. I don't know. And that concerns, but let's see. But I think generally in this space, a bank that has liquidity, that's not, that has a balanced portfolio, hasn't verticalized too much on retail and hospitality, tourism. We're all going to get through this together. And that's the big thing I've learned through this. We all need to work. We all need to look after each other. It's not going to be ideal. We need to be flexible. We need to, just be a bit understanding and realize that, everyone's really struggling with this thing. Yeah. And if we pull together, we're going to get through it.
So we talked about banks and some of the tech companies, but other businesses in the industry, which do you feel will be at risk? They'll have a tough time.
Yeah, we know it's hot. I've got a couple of social enterprise hotels in Indonesia. Yeah, and I think they're the best hotels in Indonesia. But let's assume they are the best, most successful hotels in Indonesia. They went from full to zero in 2 weeks. Every single booking cancelled because we relied on foreign tourists. Yeah, so I've got a hotel orangutan in the jungle. So foreign tourists coming in and seeing the orangutan. Indonesia wouldn't let foreigners in, and rightly so. They had to close the jungle because they didn't want anyone with giving COVID to the orangutans. They got another place, a beach resort, which didn't have that issue, but that's it, closed, done. So it could be the best hotel in Indonesia. I would have 0 guests, 0. So it's done. And that's a big issue. I feel very sorry if we think about the different tranches these businesses are in. So tranche 1, highest impact, you've gone from there to 0. And, I'm doing fundraisers to help the village because the whole village relies on tourism. I've put my staff on 50% salary, literally forever till the whole of this year. And, whenever we come out of this thing, and I'll just have to suffer that and use my savings and put more money into my social enterprises. It's the right thing to do. Yeah. But there's nothing I can do about it. No, I can't pivot. I can't do anything. And, doing what I can, creating projects, doing, renovations, so at least I can get money into people's hands. And that's tough. So if you're in those industries, tourism, travel, retail as well, at least retail's opening up a bit quicker because there's a domestic market. So if you're in a country with good domestic flows, Philippines is a big country that does a lot domestically and buys domestically. Indonesia's the same. And others, then it's going to be easier because the borders are staying closed in many countries. Yeah. So we get through this big hump of infections and, terrible, people are losing their family. And then it's kind of going okay-ish and declining. The last thing you want is all these people from other countries coming in.
Yes.
Potentially bringing in other waves of this thing. So we're going to see borders closed. That does mean that, again, tourism, hospitality, restaurants are going to be hit because people don't, one, they've got used to eating at home and saving money, and then 2, some people don't feel as confident. 3, we need more spacing and more cleanliness and this kind of stuff. And then I think the next range of businesses, so there's the ones who just literally got hit by, it's almost been hit by lightning. You were in the industry which was, most impacted by by COVID. The next ones are the ones who've just kind of bunkered down and they're coming out of it. So you get some of the, we get some of the retail businesses. We're getting some manufacturing starting again. We're getting the auto, cars are being sold again. And that's kind of coming back to life because it has a domestic market. And they're the ones in the middle that we hope to see that they will recover. But what we're going to see is we're going to see quite successful, if we think about startups, suddenly die and get replaced by newer versions of them. And so because what we're going to see is maybe they've got to a certain scale, they've been successful, but they're using the model is they need to raise loads of money and do really big growth, like kind of the SoftBank model, and that we've seen with many like Uber and others. And so they're pumping in VC funds to create cheap products. So they're doing cheaper taxis than the competitor, they're giving cheaper e-commerce or cheaper insurance. And that's a great model. And it's been successful if you keep getting the money being pumped in. At the moment, money's pretty tight. And so those businesses could potentially fail and they're going to leave a hole in the market. And so someone fresh with no debt and low operating costs and some VC money, it's like a forest. It will suddenly start to replace them. So it's like a forest, the big tree that hogged all the sunlight, gets cut down and falls over, and then suddenly all these new shoots come up to take its space. And then, finally, we're seeing the companies which are kind of neutral to actually kind of in favor, if we can, certainly wouldn't use the word winners, but are better survivors. So they're the ones, the e-commerce companies, the home deliveries, some areas of financial services that have maybe their business like Zoom's have been accelerated by this pandemic as well. So I wouldn't really, my personal at the moment, I'm not investing. One, I'm not a particularly brave investor, and two, I just don't know how long this thing's going to go. I've got a lot of people to look after. I've got staff in 2 social enterprise hotels. I've got another couple of businesses. I've got my family in the UK. I was meant to be married, but I couldn't fly. My fiance, we were going to fly to Togo and get married. We're in Australia, and so I'm not even looking at this thinking of ways to make money. I'm all defensive, keeping cash, just watch. And I'll probably wait until we start to really see the depths of the domino start falling and we start to see a bit of hope coming back. And we kind of understand where all the, where all the bad debt is. And we start to uncover that. And then we start to recover that. That's where I would... me personally, that's where I would go after. But I mean, there's lots of places to keep your money, certainly, and the out of traditional banks as well.
So, which makes me ask you: is it wise to leave your money in the bank now?
Certainly. I mean, if you think about, the first thing, check the deposit guarantee. Whichever country, whichever bank you're at, check the deposit guarantee. If the deposit guarantee is in place, you're a country. Some countries have them in place, but you have to judge by your own country. And some countries maybe you think, oh, we won't get the money back. But many countries, if there's deposit guarantee, and most countries, the government have said they're going to back that up to a certain dollar value, then that should be considered safe. As long as it's in a larger bank, one would assume there isn't overexposed, then that would be fine. Please, don't take your money out and pull it under your bed. That's one, you're not coping with inflation. And so if your inflation in your countries, inflation is going to get worse maybe through this pandemic, then you're losing money. So if the inflation's 5%, every year it's under your bed, it's been reduced by 5%. Secondly, you've got crime, so if things get a bit more desperate, probably crime will go up and you get the money stolen. Even if you've got a safe, safes, they could rip them out of the wall, they could smash them up. But there's other things you could do. You can buy gold with it as well, and precious metals. You can buy government bonds, are fairly safe, these kind of things as well. But whatever you do, don't take the cash out and hide it under your bed. That really is could be one of the first worst things you could do. Hey, but I'm not a licensed financial advisor. You have to take this for yourself. But you know, there are other options, but generally keeping it in a bank which has a government guarantee would be one of the better options at the moment, I feel. And people can put it in crypto and other stuff, but you know, my guidance is, if you really understand cryptocurrency and you're comfortable with it, yeah, and you can afford the losses, yeah, do it. If you're not an expert and you can't take heavy losses, don't do it.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Yeah. Sometimes the best place to put your money is to pay off your mortgage.
True. That's true.
There's a guaranteed interest you're going to make. So if your mortgage is 5% and you pay it off, you've guaranteed 5% return. So sometimes it's the simpler things in times where it's very disruptive, unless you're a smarter investor or more sophisticated or more experienced than myself.
How about stocks? I mean, the stocks are dipping in. I don't know. Some are talking about it. Is it wise to invest in stocks?
Well, you know, my business partner, my co-founder, David, you know, he's an expert, investment expert. He got it. He got a load of equity at the bottom, rode it back up to the top, you know, and exited before they kind of went down a bit again. If you're an expert, then yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be listening to you would be listening to me for an expert. But if you're like a mum and pop and you're not an expert, really, you know, just it's too volatile at the moment. Yeah. Simple investments are, you know, things like index trackers, which is the overall, you know, FTSE 100. They're very simple investments. They always, you know, go back up the Nasdaq, all this kind of stuff. At the moment, it's fairly high. You know, there's some, if you look, there's, you know, bargains in oil and this kind of stuff. But you know, my caution at the moment is, and caution to myself, because I don't give an investment advice, really is, we don't know which companies are going to go bust, and that's the real risk in the stock market. Is obviously the valuation, the business goes down. What happens if it goes to zero because it's bust? You've lost everything. Yeah, you've gone. Yeah, the company's gone, your money's gone. So yeah, talk to a financial advisor. If you're in Australia, go to PictureWealth.com. We have over 100 financial advisors who are 10 times smarter than me, and they would give you license and specific advice. But generally, if you're not a sophisticated investor, that you don't understand the stock market, the fundamentals, you haven't really done it before, and generally, if something looks too good to be true, it usually is too good to be true. True. And we're going to see more disruption, and it could be a long-term thing. You could potentially lose your job, or your family or loved ones could lose their job or get sick. And so really, in my mind, as I said, if you're sophisticated, you know what you're doing, you're brave, you can afford to lose, you can make a lot of money at the moment. True. If you're an average mom and pop investor, you know, for me, it's about protection. I
got this from the Oxford Economics Report. They assess that the impact of COVID-19 is a short-term one, because there are measures that have done to stabilize the pandemic. But the key here is countries have to replicate it. I think the country that they were pointing out was China. So do you think it's worth calling a short-term one?
I would be cautious. I certainly wouldn't bet my house on it's going to be short. Currently, most countries are beyond the peak of this. If it pray that this is the peak, and you know, we're not going to get a second or third or fourth one that's even worse. But don't forget, a lot of countries have emptied their bank accounts, yeah, and so they've been paying, tens of billions of dollars to pay for staff. If they got public health systems, a lot of money has been pumped into that. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs and are going to be reliant on the government. Governments are running out of money.
Yeah, true.
Whether the economy comes back or not, how does the government, apart from print money, the government needs tax dollars. And so if we're talking, a mass unemployment because businesses have collapsed, where's the tax money coming from? It doesn't come back instantly. It's not like, ba-dang, and we're back and everyone's got a job, we've all got tax. And so that could be an issue. I think employment is going to be a big issue. I think companies may not have had enough liquidity to survive, and even if they come back, it's going to be too slow, and they won't have enough liquidity, and they'd fail, and hence they have to completely close. Or what I've noticed is many have scaled back, so they did big growth plans, they hired a lot of people, maybe rented warehouses or shops or locations. Suddenly they just cancel all those. They've just opened a new location, immediately close it. They just hired 100 staff immediately, make them all redundant. And so that's the first stage. That right, we'll take our 2020 growth plans that we started in January and just shut them down and reverse them all. All those people we hired, make them redundant. That will give them a bit more longevity. But then are people buying as they were? We're seeing in luxury goods now. I was reading the news this morning in Singapore. People aren't buying luxury goods. They're worried.
Yes.
They're worried it could be long. They're not going to spend. And so, to tell you the truth, I don't know. We can only hope. Everyone's hoping. Everyone's like, we're all trying to be positive because it has to work. We don't want, in fairness, some countries have just come out of the 2008 financial crash. It took them 10 years. So we've had like 2 years of kind of party time. And then, oh no, wait a minute, it's just going to be another decade-long thing. And some countries are going to fare better than others. Let's just be honest with that. Tourist-centric countries, Thailand must be really suffering at the moment.
Yeah,
for example, a lot of their GDP is coming from tourism. Philippines as well, a lot, not quite the percentage of Thailand, but still, and that isn't going to change anytime soon. I mean, it's. I think the appetite. I used to do 200 flights a year. I at the moment I don't want to fly. I don't really. I can't anyway. I can't leave here and fly anyway. So that might take a long time to come back. It might be too long that the liquidity of these businesses won't last.
Okay. So
but I hope I'm wrong.
All of us are hoping you're wrong.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just trying to give a balanced view just based on what I'm reading. We all hope it's going to bounce back and it'll all be good.
Yeah. How about the call center industry? Do you see it getting affected by this? I mean, they're one of the companies who can easily adopt the work from home, right? I mean, but I've heard that they have to make some layoffs.
I suppose it does depend whether, and obviously, Philippines historically has been, the kind of call center of the world, and rightly so. Yeah, I mean, very good English, very well trained, very understanding, very smart, and good cost base, good infrastructure, good kind of legal systems, all that kind of stuff. So rightly so, Philippine had the crown. I think it depends what business you're in. We're seeing, we've actually had to hire more customer service people because there's a lot more dialogue happening with our customers. They want to meet their advisors more often. They want to have discussions around their finances. So at a base level, if some businesses are going to go bust or scale back, yes, then the call center would be scaling back. It depends if it's outbound and service. So if it's outbound as in lead generation, you could see maybe that scales back if that's going to be a big cost for a business as they kind of batten down the hatches to weather the storm, that they just want to focus on, working with their profitable clients. They don't want to do a big capital outlay to kind of scale up their call center to get new business. They're just happy to keep what they've got. But then in the service, customers are more, we're asking more questions, basically of their businesses. And so I think it's pluses and minuses. And what are you seeing? I mean, you're closer to the ground. What are you seeing over there currently?
I don't know. It's very mixed here. Everybody is sketchy here. But what I do notice here right now is that there are still companies very hesitant with the work from home work, because most are managed by traditional leaders. So, well,
That's it.
that's the
Yeah.
problem. But
Yeah. Well, leaders think that if they can't see the staff at their desk, and
yeah,
that
that's
they're
true.
not working, and that's a misconception. I think actually you can get more out of your staff if you're seen as a leader, which gives freedom. And that's what I'll be talking about at TechSauce. My kind of leadership traits. I'll probably go through one of those, because one is freedom. Yeah. I did a quote. I've been saying this statement for quite a few years. It got in the press last year and caused some interesting conversations. And it was, I said that if one of my staff could achieve their year's work and their year's target in one day, they could take the rest of the year off. And a lot of people are like, wow, I'm deadly serious. So I'm sure some of my staff are watching this. If you can do your whole year's work in one day, you can take the rest of the year off. But stay just one more day and teach the rest of my staff that, and then you can all take the rest of the year off. And but when you come back, your target will be exactly 365 times multiplied. but and I'm deadly serious, and because I'm not buying your time. I'm buying your execution. I'm buying your passion. I'm buying, that's what I'm paying your salary for. Your ability, your care, your customers, and that's what I'm buying. I'm not buying your time. And so my point is, maybe an extreme example is I used to have staff. They stopped doing it now. Come in and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm late." Oh, okay. Late for what? We didn't have a meeting. Oh no, I'm late. I was meant to be in the office at 8:30. It's now 9. Oh, please don't tell me you're late again. I don't really care what hours you work. Just wherever. Yeah, just get on and do your job. If I can't see you around enough, or I think there's issues, I'll come have a chat with you. Just so I'm not going to be sat here measuring what time you come in and out. I don't hire people like I expect to. I just don't hire people I would expect to manage like that. And if I had to manage them, then maybe they're not suitable for the culture I have. And so I'm deadly serious. So the first thing is a leader, freedom, yeah. And let people explore, let them try new things. This kind of thing. Next thing is protection. And certainly leaders talk about protection. Oh, I look after, but really you've got to live by it. Yeah, you've got to. I've had multiple examples. People saying, "Hey Neil, one of your staff did something wrong." I go, "Okay, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." But Neil, no. Can you talk to your staff about it? It's them. I really like you. We're both managing directors, whatever. It's your staff, not you. I said, no, it's me. Yeah. But Neil, you didn't know nothing about it. I know. Well, that's my fault. Yeah. Maybe I didn't train them. It's all my fault. And actually taking that on, everything that happens below me is my fault. Whether I knew about it, whatever, it's my fault. And that's the important thing, is to show that once your staff realize that they're protected, because especially if you're in transformation, you're trying to do something really ambitious, really new, do a big transformation, or a cultural transformation, a digital transformation, people are trying stuff they've never done before. There's going to be mistakes. And if they believe that their leader will protect them, then they'll be more ambitious and they won't be scared to try it. Now, if someone is continually making the same mistake, that's a different issue. So first, freedom. Second, protection. Third is education. And that's all. I'm not talking about the click-through courses we do online. I mean, they're obviously important, but I mean education that's outside of their job. I've taught innovation people how to sell, how to pitch, how to do advertising, data analytics, such. I've took them in the jungle trekking, taught them philosophy. I've taught my staff at my hotels Tai Chi and Kung Fu. and you know, making them more rounded as a human, I find makes them a lot more effective. And then the final thing is inspiration. So how do you? Most work is quite boring, and I had this part. I can make anything sound exciting. I can really just. It can be the most boring job in the world. I'll make it sound exciting. Whereas I used to have a boss who could take the most interesting job and make it sound really boring. And you know, a very simple way to make something interesting is go, right, we're going to start this project. Okay, what project are you doing? A good example might be, I'm going to do a wealth project. Oh, that's great. Okay, who's the best in the world at wealth? Oh, we don't know. Well, better go find out. Go look at who's the best in the world, and why. A lot of people say, "Oh, we did this amazing thing. Oh, we're thought leaders. We're world best." And I'm like, who is the world's best? Oh, we don't know. We must be. I'm like, no, you can't self-proclaim you're good. You need to benchmark yourself. So start a project, find the world's best example. Then how do they do it? Deconstruct it, and then look at where do you want to play? Do you want to beat the world's best? Maybe not. Too expensive, yeah. Not suitable. Blah blah blah. Or maybe you could go, okay, we're going to be at least half as good. At least you know, yeah. And also that starts to make it exciting. So suddenly you just got a normal project you're doing in your company, the next project off your project list, and suddenly you're looking at what the world's best do, and yeah, can we beat them, and what makes them better, and how can we do it differently, and suddenly things get a bit more interesting and inspirational. And so the thing of a leader is you need to inspire people to do their career's best work. That's all you need to do. So, you know, in a transformation, yes, do your digital, do your tech transformation. That's a given. You know, be at least okay at doing that. At the same time, inspire your staff to do their career's best work, and you'll win. You'll just win. Yeah, and that's what I found. For me, it's always about the talent. Yeah.
True.
And so
so thank you so much, Neal, for spending the time with me, and I really got a lot of good information from you.
Good. I'm glad I could help. Thank you for giving me this platform, and you know, I some great questions. Thanks.